The letter arrived on a Thursday morning, and Beatrice Porter stared at it like it might explode in her hands. Her grandmother had died 3 weeks ago, and the grief was still raw enough that sometimes she forgot to breathe properly. Now this. A summons to the office of Owen Quinlan, CEO of Quinlan Maritime Industries, one of the largest shipping companies on the East Coast. The letter was brief and formal, requesting her presence to discuss matters related to her grandmother's estate. Beatrice had no idea what her grandmother, a retired schoolteacher who lived in a modest cottage by the shore, could possibly have to do with a shipping magnate. She wore her only good dress to the meeting, a navy blue sheath that she usually reserved for job interviews. At 26, Beatrice was working 2 jobs to make ends meet. Mornings at a bakery, afternoons at a bookstore. Neither paid well, but both kept her too busy to dwell on the fact that her life felt stuck in place while everyone else seemed to be moving forward. The Quinlan building rose 40 stories into the Boston skyline, all glass and steel and intimidating corporate success. Beatrice's palms were sweating by the time she reached the top floor. A sleek receptionist directed her to wait in a conference room with a view that stretched across the harbor. Ships moved like toys in the distance, and Beatrice wondered if they all belonged to the man she was about to meet. When Owen Quinlan walked in, she was surprised by how young he was. She had expected someone older, gray-haired and stern. Instead, he looked to be in his early 30s, tall and broad-shouldered with dark hair and sharp gray eyes that seemed to take in everything at once. He wore his expensive suit like armor, and there was something guarded in his expression that made her instinctively straighten in her chair. "Miss Porter, thank you for coming." His voice was deep and measured as he extended his hand. His grip was firm but not aggressive. "I have to admit, I'm confused about why I'm here," Beatrice said, settling back into her seat as he took the chair across from her. "The letter mentioned my grandmother, but I don't understand the connection." Owen opened the folder he had carried in with him. "Your grandmother, Eleanor Porter, owned a property on the coast, a lighthouse keeper's cottage and the surrounding 5 acres. Harmon Point," Beatrice said softly. She had spent every childhood summer there, learning to identify shells and seabirds, helping her grandmother tend the wild garden that grew in the salt air. "But that's been in our family for generations. What does it have to do with Quinlan Maritime?" "My company has been negotiating to purchase that land for the past 18 months. We're expanding our operations, and the location is ideal for a new container terminal. Your grandmother and I had several meetings about it." Beatrice felt something cold settle in her stomach. "She never mentioned that to me. The negotiations were confidential. We had reached a preliminary agreement pending some environmental surveys." Owen's expression remained neutral, professional. "Then she passed away. I'm very sorry for your loss. Thank you." The words felt automatic. Beatrice's mind was racing. "So what happens now? I inherited the property. Are you expecting me to honor whatever agreement she made?" "There was no signed contract. Legally, you're under no obligation." Owen leaned back slightly, and for the first time, she saw something that might have been weariness cross his face. "But I'm hoping we can come to terms. The project represents a significant investment and hundreds of jobs. Quinlan Maritime is prepared to offer you fair market value, well above it actually." He slid a paper across the table. The number written there made Beatrice's breath catch. It was more money than she had ever imagined having. Enough to pay off her student loans, quit her exhausting jobs, maybe even go back to school like she had always wanted. But it was also the lighthouse cottage. The place where her grandmother had taught her to make blackberry jam and told her stories about the sea. The place that was the last real connection she had to family. "I can't," she heard herself say. I'm sorry, but I can't sell it. Owen's expression didn't change, but something shifted in his eyes. I understand this is a difficult time. You don't have to make a decision today. Think about it. I don't need to think about it. Beatrice stood up, suddenly desperate to be out of this gleaming office with its impossible choices. That cottage is all I have left of her. It's not for sale. She was halfway to the door when Owen spoke again. Your grandmother told me you spent your summers there as a child. She said you loved the tide pools. Beatrice turned back, startled. She talked to you about me. She was very proud of you. Your degree in marine biology, your work ethic. Owen stood as well, his hands in his pockets, and for a moment he looked less like a corporate CEO and more like an actual person. She also said you had given up on your dreams to take care of her when she got sick, that you put your graduate school plans on hold. The lump in Beatrice's throat made it hard to speak. She needed me. She wanted you to have opportunities. That's what she told me. Owen's voice had gentled slightly. She thought selling the property might give you that chance. Then why didn't she sign the contract before she died? Beatrice's eyes were burning now. Maybe she changed her mind. Maybe she realized some things are more important than money. Maybe, Owen agreed quietly. Or maybe she wanted you to have the choice she couldn't make for you. Beatrice left without another word, her vision blurred with tears she refused to let fall until she was safely in the elevator. Over the next 2 weeks, she tried to put the meeting out of her mind. She threw herself into work, pulling double shifts at the bakery and reorganizing entire sections at the bookstore. But the number Owen had written down kept appearing in her thoughts, along with the image of his gray eyes watching her with something that might have been understanding. She drove out to Harmon Point on her day off, unlocking the cottage for the first time since the funeral. Everything was exactly as her grandmother had left it. The faded floral curtains, the collection of sea glass on the windowsill, the jigsaw puzzle half finished on the kitchen table. Beatrice wandered through the rooms, touching things gently, and ended up sitting on the porch steps watching the waves crash against the rocks below. This was where she had decided to study marine biology, sitting on these same steps at age 12. Captivated by the complexity of the ecosystem in a single tide pool. This was where her grandmother had held her when her parents died in a car accident during her freshman year of college. This was where she had felt most herself, but it was also empty now, haunting with absence, and if she was honest with herself, she couldn't afford to keep it. The property taxes alone were beyond her means, and the cottage needed repairs she couldn't pay for. She pulled out her phone and stared at the business card Owen had given her, his personal number written on the back in bold, confident handwriting. Before she could overthink it, she called. He answered on the second ring. Owen Quinlan. It's Beatrice Porter. She took a breath. I'm at the cottage. Can you come out here? I think we should talk. There was a pause. I can be there in an hour. He arrived in 50 minutes, trading his suit for dark jeans and a gray sweater that made his eyes look like the ocean before a storm. Beatrice watched from the porch as he got out of a sleek black car and noticed the way he stopped to look at the view, his expression softening slightly. It's beautiful, he said as he climbed the steps. The photos in the survey didn't do it justice. My grandmother always said this was the best view on the coast. Beatrice gestured to the empty space beside her on the steps. After a moment's hesitation, Owen sat down, leaving a careful distance between them. Tell me the truth. If you build your container terminal here, what happens to all of this? Owen was quiet for a long moment, staring out at the water. The cottage would be demolished. The land would be cleared and paved. We'd build loading cranes, storage facilities, office buildings. You'd destroy it. We'd develop it. He turned to look at her. I know that's not what you want to hear, but those ships out there, They carry goods that people need. Medicine, food, supplies. My terminal would make that process more efficient, more cost-effective. It would create jobs for this community. That matters too. I know, Beatrice said miserably. I know it does. And I know I sound like a selfish person who cares more about nostalgia than progress. But when I imagine this place gone, covered in concrete, it feels like losing her all over again. You don't sound selfish. You sound like someone who loved your grandmother very much. Owen's voice had lost its corporate polish. For what it's worth, I don't enjoy this part of the job, asking people to give up places that matter to them. Then why do it? Because my father built this company from nothing, and when he died, he left it to me, and I've been trying to prove I deserve it ever since. The admission seemed to surprise him as much as it surprised her. He stood up abruptly. I should go. I didn't come here to pressure you. Wait. Beatrice stood too. I need more time to figure out what to do. Is that okay? Owen met her eyes and she saw something there she hadn't expected, patience. Take all the time you need, I'm not going anywhere. But time didn't make the decision any easier. Beatrice visited the cottage every weekend and found herself calling Owen with questions about the project, about what would happen to the local wildlife, about whether there were alternatives to completely destroying the landscape. He answered every question thoroughly, sometimes sending her detailed reports and environmental impact studies. On her fourth weekend at the cottage, she was surprised to find his car already parked in the driveway. Owen was standing at the edge of the cliff, looking out at the water, and he startled slightly when she called his name. I'm sorry, I should have called first. He looked almost embarrassed. I was in the area and I wanted to see it again. The property, I can leave. You don't have to. Beatrice walked over to stand beside him. Were you really in the area or did you just want to come here? A small smile tugged at his mouth. The second one. This place gets under your skin. They stood in silence for a while, watching a pair of seabirds circle over the waves. Finally, Beatrice said, Tell me about your father. What was he like? Owen's expression shifted, becoming distant, larger than life. He started as a dock worker and built an empire through sheer determination and ruthless business sense. Everyone respected him. Some people feared him. Did you fear him? Sometimes. He had very specific ideas about what strength looked like, what success looked like. Owen's jaw tightened slightly. He died 5 years ago, heart attack in his office. I found out later that he had been ignoring symptoms for months because he didn't want to appear weak. I'm sorry. The company nearly fell apart in the first year after he died. I was 27 and everyone assumed I'd run it into the ground. So I worked 20-hour days, made brutal decisions, proved I could be just as tough as he was. He glanced at her. I'm not sure he'd be proud of who I became, but at least the company survived. My grandmother used to say that survival isn't the same as living, Beatrice said softly. Near the end, when the hospice nurse asked if she wanted aggressive treatment that might give her a few more weeks, she said no. She said she'd rather have one good day than 10 painful ones. She sounds like she was wise. She was. She also said that the best things in life are the ones that scare you a little. Beatrice turned to face him. I think that's why I can't decide about selling. Both choices scare me. Owen looked at her with an intensity that made her breath catch. What scares you about keeping it? That I'm holding on to the past instead of moving forward, that I'm being impractical and foolish. And selling it, that I'll regret it for the rest of my life, that I'll lose the last piece of who I was before everything got so hard. She wrapped her arms around herself. God, I'm sorry. You came here to check on a business deal and I'm having an existential crisis at you. I like listening to you talk, Owen said, and there was something in his voice that made her heart skip. You're honest. That's rare in my world. They stood there as the sun began to sink toward the horizon, painting the sky in shades of amber and rose, and Beatrice realized with a start that she felt comfortable with him, more comfortable than she had felt with anyone in a long time. "Would you like to see inside the cottage?" she heard herself ask. "It's not much, but there's tea in my grandmother's photo albums." Owen smiled, a real smile that transformed his entire face. "I'd like that very much." They spent the evening sitting on the faded couch, drinking tea and looking through albums filled with faded photographs. Beatrice told him stories about learning to sail in the tiny boat her grandfather had built, about the time she got stung by a jellyfish, and her grandmother made a poultice from seaweed that actually worked. Owen listened with genuine interest, asking questions, laughing at the funny parts. When he finally stood to leave, it was past 10 and the moon was hanging full and bright over the water. "Thank you," he said at the door, "for letting me see this. I understand now why you can't let it go." "Owen," Beatrice said, her heart pounding, "were you married?" "Your father, did he want you to continue the family line or something?" He looked surprised by the question. "No, I've been too focused on work for relationships. My father used to say I needed to find a woman who understood the demands of business, someone practical and ambitious." He paused. "I think that's why I never found anyone. I was looking for someone like him instead of someone I actually wanted to be with." "What changed?" "I met someone who makes me think maybe he was wrong about what matters." Owen held her gaze for a long moment, and the air between them felt charged with possibility. Then he stepped back. "Good night, Beatrice." After that evening, things shifted between them. Owen started finding excuses to visit the property, sometimes bringing takeout coffee and pastries from a cafe near his office. They would walk the cliffs together, talking about everything and nothing. Beatrice learned that he loved old movies and terrible puns, that he had wanted to be a marine archaeologist before his father's expectations pulled him in a different direction, that he was terrified of failing the thousands of people who depended on Quinlan Maritime for their livelihoods. She told him about her graduate school dreams, about the research position at Woods Hole that she had turned down to care for her grandmother, about how she sometimes felt like she was watching her own life from a distance, unable to fully participate in it. "Why do you still work 2 jobs?" Owen asked one Saturday afternoon as they sat on the beach below the cottage, watching the tide come in. "The bakery and the bookstore, I mean. That's exhausting. Because I need the money, and because staying busy means I don't have time to think about everything I've given up." Beatrice picked up a handful of sand and let it slip through her fingers. "I know it sounds like I'm stuck in self-pity, I just don't know how to move forward." "You're not stuck in self-pity, you're grieving." Owen was quiet for a moment. "Can I ask you something? If money wasn't an issue, what would you do? Right now, today, if you could do anything." Beatrice didn't have to think about it. "I'd go back to school, finish my master's degree in marine biology, maybe get my PhD, do research on coastal ecosystems and climate change adaptation. Then do it." "It's not that simple. Graduate programs are expensive. I'd have to quit my jobs, which means I couldn't pay rent or buy food or, survive." "What if I offered you a deal?" Owen turned to face her, his expression serious. "Quinlan Maritime has a corporate foundation that funds environmental research. What if we sponsored your graduate work, covered tuition, provided a living stipend in exchange for your expertise on coastal development projects?" Beatrice stared at him. "You can't be serious." "I'm completely serious. We're required to conduct environmental impact assessments anyway. Why not work with someone who actually cares about protecting these ecosystems?" He held up a hand before she could respond. "Before you say no, this isn't charity. I've seen your undergraduate thesis on tidal zone biodiversity. You're brilliant. You'd be an asset to any project. And the cottage, is this conditional on me selling you the property? Absolutely not. The two things are completely separate. Owen's gray eyes were steady on hers. If you never sell me Harmon Point, the offer still stands. I want you to have this opportunity because you deserve it, not because I'm trying to manipulate you into a business deal. Beatrice felt tears prick her eyes. Why are you doing this? Really? Because somewhere along the way, this stopped being about business for me. Owen reached out and gently tucked a strand of wind-blown hair behind her ear, his fingers lingering against her cheek. Because I care about you, Beatrice, more than I probably should. Her breath caught. Owen, I'm not ready for this. Whatever this is between us, I'm not ready. I'm still such a mess, still grieving, still trying to figure out who I am without her. I can't be what you need right now. I'm not asking you to be anything except yourself. His hand dropped away, but his gaze remained intense. And I'm not going anywhere. I'll wait however long it takes. The words hung in the air between them, a promise that felt too big and too perfect to be real. Beatrice wanted to believe him, wanted to lean into the warmth she felt when he looked at her like that. But fear held her back, the fear that if she let herself fall for this man, she would lose him too, and she wasn't sure she could survive another loss. I need time, she whispered. I know. I'll wait. The summer unfolded slowly, each day bleeding into the next in a haze of salt air and possibility. Beatrice applied to graduate programs with Owen's encouragement, updating her resume and requesting recommendation letters from old professors. Owen continued to visit the cottage, always bringing some excuse, a question about the property, an environmental survey to show her, but really just wanting to spend time together. They never spoke again about his admission of feelings, but the knowledge of it hummed between them constantly, an undercurrent of tension and longing that made every casual touch feel electric. Beatrice caught herself watching him when he didn't notice, admiring the way the sunlight caught in his dark hair, the way his whole face softened when he laughed at something she said. But she also noticed the shadows under his eyes that spoke of long work hours, the way his phone rang constantly with urgent business matters, the tension in his shoulders when he talked about the company. Owen Quinlan was a man carrying the weight of an empire, and Beatrice wasn't sure there was room in that life for someone like her. In July, she received acceptance letters from 3 different graduate programs. She sat on the cottage porch, reading them over and over, hardly daring to believe it was real. When Owen arrived that evening, she ran to meet him, waving the letters like flags. I got in, all 3 programs, and 2 offered funding. She was laughing and crying at the same time. Owen, I got in. He picked her up and spun her around, his laughter mixing with hers, and when he set her back down, they were standing so close she could feel the warmth of his body, see the flecks of silver in his gray eyes. For one breathless moment, she thought he might kiss her, and she wanted him to, wanted it so badly her entire body ached with it. But he stepped back, his smile gentle. I knew you would. You're extraordinary, Beatrice Porter. I couldn't have done this without you. Yes, you could have. You just needed someone to remind you what you're capable of. He looked down at the letters. Which program are you choosing? The one at Boston University. It's a perfect fit for my research interests, and it means I can stay close to. She trailed off, realizing what she had been about to say. Stay close to you. Owen's expression told her he understood anyway. When do you start? September. Which means I need to give notice at both jobs, find an apartment closer to campus, figure out what to do about the cottage. The practical concerns crowded in, dimming her excitement. God, there's so much to figure out, one thing at a time. Owen's voice was calm, grounding. But Beatrice, You can't keep the cottage while you're in graduate school. The maintenance alone would be impossible to manage long distance, and you can't afford the property taxes on a student stipend. She knew he was right, had known it for weeks really, but kept pushing the knowledge away. I know, I just don't know if I can stand to sell it to you knowing what you'll do to it. Then don't sell it to me. Owen pulled out his phone, typing quickly. Sell it to a conservation trust. I've been doing some research, and there are several organizations that preserve historic coastal properties. They'd maintain the cottage, maybe turn it into an educational center or a research station. The land would be protected. Beatrice stared at him. But what about your container terminal? The expansion project. We'll find another location. It will cost more and take longer, but we'll figure it out. He met her eyes. Some things are more important than business efficiency. Owen, you've been working on this project for almost 2 years. Your company needs it. My company will survive, and I need you to be happy more than I need a new terminal. The rawness in his voice made her chest tight. Please, Beatrice, let me help you save this place. She wanted to argue, to tell him he was being foolish, sacrificing too much. But the hope blooming in her chest was too big to contain. You'd really do that? Give up the project, for you? Yes, I'd do a lot more than that. This time when he looked at her with those steady gray eyes, Beatrice didn't step back. She closed the distance between them, rising on her toes to press her lips to his. Owen made a sound of surprise that melted into something deeper as his arms came around her, pulling her close. The kiss was gentle at first, tentative, but it quickly became something more urgent as months of wanting poured out between them. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Owen rested his forehead against hers. Tell me you're ready. Please tell me you're ready for this. I'm terrified, Beatrice admitted, her hands fisted in his shirt. I'm terrified of losing you, of not being enough, of all the ways this could go wrong. Join the club. I'm terrified too. He cupped her face in his hands. But I've been waiting for you, Beatrice. I'll keep waiting if you need me to. But I really hope you don't make me wait much longer, because I'm completely in love with you. The words should have scared her, should have sent her running. Instead, they felt like coming home. I love you too, she whispered. I think I have for a while now. I was just too afraid to admit it. Don't be afraid, not with me. Owen kissed her again, softer this time, full of promise. We'll figure everything out together. Over the next few weeks, they did exactly that. Owen connected Beatrice with a marine conservation trust that was thrilled to take ownership of Harmon Point. The cottage would be preserved as a field research station, available for use by graduate students studying coastal ecosystems. Beatrice would even be able to stay there during her own research, which felt like the best possible outcome. She quit both her jobs, giving tearful notice at the bakery and bookstore. Her co-workers threw her a goodbye party and made her promise to visit. She packed up her small apartment and moved her meager belongings into a nicer place near the BU campus that Owen helped her find. She insisted on paying her own rent with the stipend money, wanting to maintain some independence even as their relationship deepened. Because it did deepen, quickly and intensely. Owen made space in his impossible schedule to have dinner with her several times a week. They explored Boston together, finding hole-in-the-wall restaurants and vintage movie theaters, talking until late into the night about everything under the sun. Beatrice met Owen's small circle of friends, mostly other business owners who seemed surprised but pleased by how happy he was. I've never seen him like this, one of them, a woman named Patricia who ran a logistics company, told Beatrice at a dinner party. Owen's always been so serious, so focused on work. You're good for him. He's good for me too, Beatrice said, watching Owen across the room as he talked animatedly about something. His whole face lit up. He makes me believe I can do impossible things. Graduate school started in September, and it was every bit as challenging and rewarding as Beatrice had hoped. She threw herself into coursework and research, often studying late into the night, fueled by coffee and determination. Owen would sometimes show up at her apartment after his own long days, bringing food and just sitting quietly beside her as she worked, his presence a comfort even in silence. They had their first real fight in October, over something small that spiraled into something bigger. Beatrice accused Owen of trying to solve all her problems with money, of not letting her struggle and figure things out on her own. Owen countered that he was just trying to support her, and that she was so determined to be independent that she wouldn't accept help even when she needed it. "I grew up with nothing," Beatrice finally said, her voice shaking. "I put myself through college on scholarships and student loans. I worked my way through everything. And then you show up with your unlimited resources, fixing things I should be able to fix myself, and it makes me feel small and incapable." "That's not my intention. That's never my intention." Owen looked stricken. "Beatrice, I don't think you're incapable. I think you're the strongest person I know. I just want to make your life easier because I love you, not because I think you need saving. I know that logically." She wrapped her arms around herself. "But sometimes I feel like we're from different worlds. You're this powerful CEO with more money than I can even imagine, and I'm just a graduate student living on ramen and library coffee. You're not just anything. You're everything to me." Owen crossed the room to pull her into his arms. "And I don't care about the money or the different worlds. I care about you, about us. Please don't push me away because you're scared." "I'm trying not to," Beatrice said into his chest. "I'm really trying." They worked through it, learning to communicate better, to voice their fears and needs before resentment could build. Owen made an effort to let Beatrice handle her own problems unless she specifically asked for help. Beatrice tried to be more gracious about accepting support, recognizing that letting someone help wasn't the same as being helpless. By November, they had found their rhythm. Owen's work demands remained intense, with frequent travel and crisis management, but he always made time for Beatrice. She learned to read his moods, to know when he needed to vent about difficult board meetings and when he needed distraction. He learned which of her research projects excited her most, memorizing facts about tidal patterns and ecosystem resilience, so he could ask informed questions. They spent Thanksgiving at Harmon Point, the first holiday since the cottage had been transferred to the Conservation Trust. The organization had made minimal changes, mostly safety updates and research equipment, but the heart of the place remained the same. Beatrice cooked a simple meal in her grandmother's kitchen, while Owen attempted to help, making her laugh with his confessions of culinary incompetence. "My father believed cooking was beneath us," he said, struggling to peel a potato. "He had private chefs for everything. I didn't learn to make even toast until college. That's tragic. Toast is a fundamental life skill." Beatrice took the peeler from him before he could injure himself. "How have you survived this long? Takeout and restaurant reservations. I'm excellent at ordering food." They ate on the porch despite the cold, wrapped in blankets, watching the gray November sea. Beatrice felt her grandmother's presence strongly, a gentle warmth that made her think a leaner would have approved of Owen, would have loved seeing her granddaughter happy and pursuing her dreams. "What are you thinking about?" Owen asked, reaching over to take her hand. "My grandmother. Wishing she could have met you." Beatrice laced their fingers together. "She would have liked you, I think, once she got past the whole billionaire CEO thing." Owen laughed. "Is that what I am now, a billionaire? The company's worth that much, but I'm not personally, fine, almost billionaire." "The point stands. She squeezed his hand. "Thank you for this, for giving up the terminal project so this place could be saved." "Best business decision I ever made," Owen said softly. "Led me to you." As winter settled in, their relationship continued to deepen. They said "I love you" easily now, the words becoming as natural as breathing. Owen kept some clothes at Beatrice's apartment, and she had a drawer at his penthouse downtown. They talked about the future in vague but hopeful terms, about where her research might lead, about how to balance their very different careers. In January, Beatrice traveled to a marine biology conference in San Diego, presenting her preliminary research findings to a room full of respected scientists. Owen flew out for the weekend to support her, sitting in the back of the auditorium and watching with undisguised pride as she fielded complex questions with confidence and expertise. "You were incredible up there," he told her afterward, kissing her soundly. "I understood maybe 30% of what you said, but you were brilliant." "I was so nervous I thought I might throw up." Beatrice was still riding the high of adrenaline and accomplishment. "But it went well, didn't it? Dr. Chen from UCLA said she wanted to collaborate on a project." "It went better than well. You commanded that room." Owen pulled her close. "I'm so proud of you." They spent the rest of the weekend exploring San Diego, acting like tourists, and Beatrice felt a lightness she hadn't experienced in years. The grief over her grandmother had softened into something more manageable, a tender ache rather than a sharp pain. She was building a life she loved, with a man she loved, and for the first time since her parents died, she felt like she belonged somewhere. But relationships, even good ones, weren't without challenges. In February, Owen's company faced a crisis when one of their ships ran aground off the coast of Portugal, spilling cargo and causing environmental damage. He was gone for 3 weeks straight, managing the disaster response and dealing with international regulators. Beatrice barely heard from him, just occasional exhausted phone calls where he sounded like he was running on fumes. When he finally came home, he looked terrible, dark circles under his eyes and a tension in his jaw that spoke of grinding stress. Beatrice took one look at him and pulled him into her apartment, running him a bath and ordering his favorite Thai food. "I'm sorry," he said as he sank into the couch beside her later, clean and fed but still looking wrung out. "I know I was gone too long. I know I barely called. The whole situation was a nightmare. You don't have to apologize for doing your job." Beatrice ran her fingers through his damp hair. "But Owen, you look like you haven't slept in days. You can't keep running yourself into the ground like this." "I'm the CEO. The company is my responsibility. When something goes wrong, I have to fix it." But there was a note of defeat in his voice that worried her. "My father never would have let that accident happen. He had a sixth sense for potential problems, could see failures coming before anyone else. Your father isn't you, and maybe that's okay." Beatrice turned to face him fully. "You're carrying this impossible burden trying to live up to a ghost. But you're human, Owen. You're allowed to delegate, to trust other people, to not have all the answers. What if I fail? What if I'm not good enough to run Quinlan Maritime? Then you'll deal with it. But you won't fail because you care too much and work too hard and you're too smart." She cupped his face in her hands. "I just wish you could see yourself the way I see you." Owen closed his eyes, leaning into her touch. "What do you see?" "Someone strong and kind and brave. Someone who gave up a major project to save a lighthouse cottage because it mattered to the woman he loved. Someone who believes in me even when I don't believe in myself." She kissed him gently. "Someone I want to spend the rest of my life with." The words hung in the air for a moment before their weight fully registered. Beatrice's eyes widened slightly, surprised by her own admission. Owen's eyes opened, gray and intense. "The rest of your life," he repeated carefully. I think so. Yes. Her heart was pounding, but she didn't take the words back. Is that crazy? We've only been together for about 6 months. It's not crazy. I've been thinking the same thing. Owen sat up, suddenly looking more alert despite his exhaustion. Beatrice, I love you. I want to build a life with you. I want to come home to you every night and wake up next to you every morning. I want to support your research and hear about your discoveries and watch you change the world. I want all of that too. Tears were spilling down her cheeks now, but I'm still scared. What if we're too different? What if your world and my world can't fit together? Then we'll make a new world that's just ours. Owen pulled her into his lap, holding her close. I'm not saying it will be easy. My job is demanding and sometimes impossible. Your research will take you to remote locations. We'll have to work at this every single day, but I want to work at it, with you. They sat there for a long time, holding each other, and Beatrice felt something settle deep in her chest. The fear didn't disappear entirely, but it became smaller, more manageable. She had spent so long protecting herself, afraid to want things because losing them hurt too much. But Owen was right. Some things were worth the risk. Spring arrived with a rush of warmth and renewal. Beatrice's research was going exceptionally well, and she had been invited to join a summer expedition studying coral reef restoration in the Caribbean. It would mean being away for 8 weeks, the longest they had been apart since getting together. The thought of leaving Owen made her chest ache, but she was also excited about the opportunity. You have to go, Owen said firmly when she tried to suggest she could skip the expedition. This is important for your career. We'll make it work. 8 weeks is a long time. I'll visit if I can, and we'll video call every day. He kissed her forehead. Besides, absence makes the heart grow fonder, right? My heart is already ridiculously fond of you. Any fonder and I'll be completely insufferable. Owen laughed. I'll risk it. 2 weeks before Beatrice was scheduled to leave for the Caribbean, Owen asked her to dinner at an exclusive restaurant overlooking the harbor. He was nervous, she could tell, fidgeting with his cufflinks in the car on the way there. It was endearing, seeing him unsettled, and she wondered what could make the unflappable Owen Quinlan anxious. She found out halfway through dessert. Beatrice, he said, setting down his fork and reaching across the table to take her hand. I've been thinking about what you said, about spending the rest of our lives together. Her heart started to race. Okay. I know the timing isn't perfect. I know you're about to leave for 2 months, and you're focused on your graduate work. But I also know that I don't want to spend another day without being sure of our future. He stood up, moving around the table, and then he was kneeling beside her chair, pulling a small velvet box from his pocket. Beatrice Porter, will you marry me? The ring was beautiful, a sapphire the color of deep ocean water surrounded by small diamonds, and Beatrice couldn't stop staring at it. Around them, other diners had noticed what was happening, and the restaurant had gone quiet. Yes, she heard herself say, laughing and crying at the same time. Yes, of course I'll marry you. Owen slid the ring onto her finger, and then he was kissing her as the restaurant erupted in applause. Beatrice felt dizzy with happiness, hardly able to believe this was her life, that this incredible man wanted to marry her. I love you, she whispered against his mouth. I love you so much. I love you too. I'm going to love you for the rest of our lives. They spent the next 2 weeks in a blissful bubble, telling friends and making preliminary plans. Owen wanted to get married as soon as possible, but Beatrice convinced him to wait until after she finished the Caribbean expedition. They settled on a late August wedding, small and intimate, just close friends and family. When it was time for Beatrice to leave for the research trip, Owen drove her to the airport, holding her hand the entire way. At the departure gate, he pulled her into a fierce hug. "Come back to me," he said into her hair. "Always. I'll always come back to you." The 8 weeks apart were difficult but manageable. They video called every evening when Beatrice had internet access, sharing the details of their days. She told him about the coral formations she was studying, about the sea turtles she saw on night dives. He told her about work challenges and wedding planning details, showing her pictures of potential venues and asking her opinion on flowers. "I never thought I'd be the kind of person who cared about wedding flowers," Owen admitted one night, looking slightly bemused. "But apparently I have opinions about roses versus peonies." "What's your opinion?" Beatrice asked, amused. "That whatever you want is perfect." "But the wedding planner keeps asking me questions." "Tell her we want simple and meaningful, nothing too fancy." Beatrice shifted on her narrow bunk bed, the boat rocking gently beneath her. "I just want to marry you, Owen. The rest is details. Simple and meaningful, I can work with that." When Beatrice finally flew home in late July, tanned and exhausted and full of exciting research data, Owen was waiting at the airport with flowers. She dropped her bags and ran to him, and the kiss they shared was deep enough to make her forget they were in public. "I missed you," she said when they finally broke apart. "God, I missed you so much. Never leave me for 8 weeks again. I barely survived." But he was grinning, looking happier than she had ever seen him. "Welcome home, future Mrs. Quinlan." "I'm keeping my name professionally," she reminded him, a conversation they had already had. "Dr. Beatrice Porter has a nice ring to it." "It does, though Dr. Beatrice Porter Quinlan has an even nicer ring," she laughed. "We'll discuss it." The month leading up to the wedding flew by in a flurry of final preparations. They had chosen Harmon Point as their venue, wanting to get married at the place that had brought them together. The Conservation Trust was thrilled to host the ceremony, and Beatrice worked with them to create an event that would showcase the beauty of the coastal ecosystem while maintaining environmental sensitivity. Her academic advisor stood in as the parent figure to walk her down the makeshift aisle, since she had no family left. Owen's mother, whom he had been estranged from for years but reconnected with during the engagement, flew in from Seattle. She was a quiet woman who seemed overwhelmed by her son's success, but genuinely happy about the marriage. "He's different with you," she told Beatrice the night before the wedding, during the small rehearsal dinner. "Softer, more like the boy he used to be before his father got hold of him." "He's pretty wonderful," Beatrice agreed. "He is, and so are you. Thank you for loving my son." The wedding day dawned clear and perfect, the ocean sparkling in the August sunlight. Beatrice got ready in the cottage, wearing a simple ivory dress that moved like water and carrying a bouquet of wildflowers picked from the cliffside garden. She felt her grandmother's presence strongly as she looked at herself in the mirror, and she liked to think Alina was smiling somewhere, happy that her granddaughter had found love in such an unexpected way. The ceremony was short and heartfelt. Owen stood at the edge of the cliff in a dark suit, the ocean wind ruffling his hair, and his eyes went wide when he saw Beatrice walking toward him. They had written their own vows, and Beatrice barely made it through hers without crying. "I wasn't ready for you," she said, her voice shaking slightly. "I was broken and grieving and so afraid of losing anything else that I had stopped letting myself want things. But you waited for me. You gave me time to heal, time to find myself again, and you loved me through all of it. You showed me that being brave enough to love someone is worth the risk. I promise to love you with that same patience and faith for the rest of our lives." Owen's voice was rough with emotion when he spoke his vows. "Beatrice, you changed my entire world. Before you, I thought success meant working myself into the ground, never showing weakness, always being in control. You taught me that real strength is vulnerability, that asking for help isn't failure, that some things matter more than business. You made me want to be better, not for my company or my father's legacy, but for myself. For us. I promise to support your dreams, to be your partner in every adventure, and to love you with everything I have for the rest of our lives. When the officiant pronounced them married, Owen kissed her like she was the most precious thing in the world, gentle and reverent, and Beatrice felt happiness bloom through her entire body. This was real. This was forever. The reception was casual and joyful, with seafood and wine and dancing on the lawn as the sun set over the water. Beatrice's graduate school friends mingled with Owen's business associates, everyone bound together by genuine affection for the couple. Patricia gave a toast about how Owen had transformed from a workaholic robot into an actual human being with feelings, which made everyone laugh and Owen blush. As the evening wound down, Beatrice and Owen slipped away from the party to walk along the beach. The stars were coming out overhead, bright against the darkening sky, and waves lapped gently at their feet. "Are you happy?" Owen asked, pulling her close. "I'm so happy I can barely stand it." Beatrice leaned into him. "Thank you for waiting for me, for not giving up when I said I wasn't ready. Thank you for eventually being ready and for saying yes." He kissed the top of her head. "I have something for you, a wedding present." "Owen, we said no gifts." "I know, but this one's important." He pulled a folded document from his jacket pocket and handed it to her. "Open it." Beatrice unfolded the paper, squinting to read it in the fading light. It took a moment for the words to make sense, and when they did, she gasped. "This is the deed to Harmon Point. You bought it from the Conservation Trust." "Not exactly. I made a very large donation to the trust with the condition that the property stays in the Porter family name in perpetuity. It can still be used for research and education, but legally it belongs to you, and to our children someday, if we have them." Owen smiled at her shocked expression. "Your grandmother wanted you to have this place. Now you do, and it will never be taken away." Beatrice was crying now, clutching the deed to her chest. "This is too much. Owen, this is too much." "It's exactly enough. I love you, Beatrice Porter Quinlan. I want you to have all your dreams." She kissed him under the stars, tasting salt and happiness, and thought about how far she had come from that scared, grieving girl who walked into a corporate office almost a year ago. She had thought she wasn't ready for love, wasn't ready for any of this. But Owen had been patient enough to wait while she found her courage, and now here they were, married and building a life together. Some things, she had learned, were worth the risk. Some things were worth being brave for. And love, the real kind that was patient and kind and unwavering, was worth everything. They honeymooned in Scotland, spending 2 weeks exploring the highlands and the coast, visiting ancient castles and eating fish and chips in tiny pub villages. Owen unplugged from work almost completely, checking his phone only once a day for emergencies, and Beatrice marveled at how relaxed he became when he allowed himself to simply be present. "We should do this more often," she said one evening as they sat in front of a fireplace in their rental cottage, drinking whiskey and watching the rain outside. "Just disappear for a while. Forget about everything except each other. I'd like that." Owen pulled her closer. "I'm trying to be better about work-life balance. I promoted James to Chief Operating Officer before we left, so he can handle day-to-day decisions without me micromanaging. How does it feel, letting go of some control? Terrifying, but also freeing." He smiled. "You were right about me trying to do everything myself. I was going to burn out eventually. Now I have people I trust to help carry the load." "I'm proud of you," Beatrice said softly. "I know how hard that is for you." When they returned to Boston in September, they settled into married life with surprising ease. Beatrice had one more year of her master's program before she would defend her thesis, and she was already being recruited for PhD programs. Owen had shifted his schedule to be home for dinner most evenings, and they had started a tradition of cooking together on weekends, attempting complicated recipes, and usually ending up ordering pizza when things went wrong. In October, Beatrice found out she had won a prestigious fellowship that would fund her doctoral research. The fellowship came with enough money that she would be financially independent, no longer relying on Owen's support or even the Quinlan Maritime Foundation. She had been worried about telling him, afraid he might feel hurt or unnecessary, but he was genuinely thrilled. "This is incredible." He picked her up and spun her around. "Do you know how competitive that fellowship is? You beat out hundreds of applicants." "I know, I still can't believe it." Beatrice was grinning so hard her face hurt. "The money means I can take on whatever research projects I want without worrying about funding. I can be completely independent." "You've always been independent," Owen said. "This just proves what I already knew. That you're brilliant and talented and you don't need anyone's help to succeed. But I'm still going to celebrate every single one of your victories like they're my own, if that's okay." "That's more than okay." She kissed him. "We're a team now. Your successes are mine and mine are yours." As fall turned to winter, they faced their first real test as a married couple. Owen's company was considering a merger with a European shipping conglomerate, a deal that would make Quinlan Maritime a truly global operation, but would also require Owen to spend significant time abroad. The decision weighed heavily on him, and he talked through every angle with Beatrice over several weeks. "The business side makes sense," he said one night, pacing their living room while Beatrice sat curled on the couch. "The merger would increase our efficiency, expand our reach, secure our position for the next 50 years. But it would mean traveling to Brussels at least once a month, being away from you, from our life here." "Is that the only thing holding you back?" Beatrice asked carefully. "It's a significant thing. We just got married. I don't want to spend half my time on another continent. But you want to do the merger, I can tell." She patted the couch beside her. "Owen, sit down, stop pacing." He sat, running a hand through his hair in frustration. "I do want it. I think it's the right move for the company, but I also meant what I said in my vows. You're my priority now, not business. Can I be your priority and you can still do what's best for your company? Those things don't have to be mutually exclusive." Beatrice took his hand. "We'll make it work. I can come with you sometimes. We'll figure out schedules. And honestly, my research will probably take me to remote locations for weeks at a time. We were always going to have to navigate being apart occasionally." "You're sure? You're not just saying this because you think it's what I want to hear, I'm sure. I married a CEO. I knew what I was signing up for." She smiled. "Besides, I've always wanted to visit Brussels. I hear the chocolate is amazing." Owen pulled her into his lap, holding her tight. "Have I mentioned lately that I love you?" "Not in the last hour. I was starting to worry." He decided to move forward with the merger, and true to her word, Beatrice adapted to the new demands on his time. She flew to Brussels with him twice, enjoying the opportunity to explore a new city and meet his European colleagues. When he traveled alone, they maintained their evening video call tradition, staying connected despite the distance. In March, Beatrice successfully defended her master's thesis, presenting her research on tidal ecosystem resilience to a committee of professors who asked challenging questions, but ultimately approved her work with high praise. Owen was in London for business but flew back early to be there for her defense, sitting in the back of the room just like he had at her first conference presentation. "Dr. Porter," he said afterward, emphasis on the new title. "How does it feel?" "Unreal." "Amazing." Terrifying, Beatrice laughed. I got accepted to the PhD program here at Boston University. I start in the fall. Of course you did. You're unstoppable. Owen hugged her close. I'm so incredibly proud of you. That summer, they returned to Harmon Point often, sometimes just for weekends, sometimes for longer stretches when Owen could work remotely. Beatrice had set up a small research station in one of the cottage outbuildings, and she spent long hours studying the tidal zones and cataloging species. Owen would join her sometimes, content to sit on the rocks and watch her work, asking questions about what she was discovering. One evening in late July, as they sat on the porch watching the sun set, Owen said, "I've been thinking about something." "That's dangerous," Beatrice teased. "I'm serious. I've been thinking about kids, about whether we want them." He glanced at her. "We've never really talked about it." Beatrice's heart skipped. They hadn't talked about it, not in any concrete way. "Do you want kids?" "I think so. Someday." "Not right now, while you're deep in your PhD and I'm managing the merger, but eventually." Owen took her hand. "What about you?" "I want them too. Eventually." She thought about it, imagining a child with Owen's gray eyes and her curiosity about the natural world. "Maybe in a few years, once my coursework is done and the merger is settled." "That sounds perfect." Owen kissed her temple. "We have time, no rush." They did have time, and they used it well. Beatrice threw herself into her doctoral work, publishing papers and presenting at conferences, building a reputation as a rising star in marine biology. Owen successfully completed the merger and began the complex work of integrating two massive companies. But he did it with better balance, delegating more and making sure to protect his time with Beatrice. They celebrated their second anniversary at Harmon Point, and their third. They traveled when they could, exploring new places together. They hosted dinner parties for friends and spent quiet evenings reading side by side. They argued sometimes, usually about small things, but they had learned how to fight fair and make up thoroughly. And when Beatrice was 4 years into her PhD program, feeling confident in her research and ready for the next chapter, they decided it was time to try for a baby. It took longer than expected, and there were some anxious months of wondering if something was wrong. But eventually Beatrice saw those 2 pink lines on a pregnancy test and burst into tears of joy. Owen was in Brussels when she found out, and she kept the secret for 2 days until he came home, wanting to tell him in person. When he walked through the door, exhausted from travel, she handed him a small wrapped box. "What's this?" He looked confused but charmed. "It's not my birthday." "Just open it." Inside the box was a tiny pair of baby shoes. Owen stared at them for a long moment, and then his eyes went wide. "Beatrice, are you? We're having a baby." She was crying and laughing. "We're going to be parents." Owen dropped the box and pulled her into his arms, holding her so tight she could barely breathe. "A baby. We're having a baby. Oh my God, Beatrice, I love you so much." The pregnancy was textbook perfect, and Beatrice continued her research almost until her due date, determined to finish a major paper before the baby arrived. Owen became comically overprotective, worried about her lifting things or staying on her feet too long, and she had to repeatedly remind him that she was pregnant, not fragile. Their daughter was born on a snowy February morning, healthy and beautiful with a full head of dark hair. They named her Alina after Beatrice's grandmother, and the moment Owen held her for the first time, tears streaming down his face, Beatrice fell in love with him all over again. "She's perfect," he whispered, his voice thick with emotion. "You're both perfect." Being parents was harder than either of them expected, but also more rewarding. Owen took paternity leave, something his father would never have done, and spent the first month home with Beatrice and Alina, learning to change diapers and master the swaddle. Beatrice finished her PhD work while nursing and managing sleepless nights, and successfully defended her dissertation when Alina was 8 months old. Dr. Beatrice Porter stood at the podium for her dissertation defense, answering questions about her research on climate change adaptation in coastal ecosystems, and looked out at the audience to see Owen holding their daughter, both of them watching her with proud expressions. She thought about the woman she had been 5 years ago, scared and grieving and convinced she wasn't ready for anything, especially not love. But she had been wrong. Or rather, she had become ready by allowing herself to be vulnerable, to trust, to take the risk. Owen had waited for her, patient and unwavering, and together they had built something extraordinary. After the defense, after the congratulations and celebrations, they drove out to Harmon Point as a family for the first time. Alina was fascinated by the ocean, her dark gray eyes wide with wonder at the waves. Beatrice held her daughter on the porch where her grandmother had once held her, where Owen had promised to wait however long it took, and felt the perfect symmetry of it all. "What are you thinking?" Owen asked, standing behind her with his arms around both his girls. "That I'm ready now, for all of it, for this life we're building together." Beatrice leaned back against him. "Thank you for waiting. Always," Owen said, kissing the top of her head. "I'd wait forever for you." And in the cottage that had been saved, in the place where grief had transformed into hope and fear into love, their family stood together watching the waves, ready for whatever came next.